Hey everyone, and welcome to today's watercolor tutorial. Today we are going to paint this super cute chihuahua with watercolors. I might also use gouache later on in the process. It depends. As always, I can never say in the beginning what art materials I'm going to use, because sometimes things develop during the process and you discover new techniques, or you think that maybe I will just have to do this or that to come to the result that you're looking for. So I'm planning on doing it with watercolors, but we will see. So I've already traced this cutie onto a piece of watercolor paper, and I changed up his tail a bit because it didn't fit that much on the format. However, it's a little bit on the edge, so I will have to do something about that. But before I do any details, let's start with the base layer. So I'm putting this aside, and so what I'm going to do, what I want to do with this portrait of a dog is to make something really nice and artsy and cute, and not just render the dog like it looks on the photograph, only in the face and maybe at some points, maybe the paws, but it should also merge into the background. So I'm going to test and try out some effects to make the fur blur into the background. So I think I will first fill out the fur. Today I'm again painting with the Komorebi watercolors again, because they have a lot of metallics that I think would look great on this cute dog's fur. And I'm going to start with the metallic bronze and metallic red ochre, because that's definitely the color of his fur. And I will just really roughly playing around here with the brush and get some interesting shapes here. So you have to really do that and follow your kind of guts here, and just play around with it. I don't have a plan when I do abstraction, so here I'm just filling a bit of the fur out, maybe adding some hair strands here and there. Maybe they will show up later, maybe they will completely be covered. I really don't know. Sometimes you just have to not be restricted and just let yourself surprise by the end result. So for example, I have no idea how this painting will look in the end, no exact idea. I have an approximate imagination maybe in which direction it will go, but I can't say for sure. So I leave out the lighter parts of the fur because I don't want to cover that. Filling out this cute paws. I just love paws so much. They're so cute. I think they're the cutest thing on dogs in general. Just paws. And just going to take a little bit more of the metallic red ochre and metallic bronze. This is, by the way, Princeton Neptune Round number 12. It's like the relatively large brush. But this is exactly the size that I need when I want to fill out more or less large areas. Okay, and now for the face, I'm just gonna put up my reference photo here so that I can see it better. For the face portion, I'm going to be a bit more careful, because here I want to set the focus of the painting. But also we don't really have a lot of light tones or whites even, so I can pretty much fill out everything here with this light metallic tone without worrying too much that I might cover some light areas. Just filling the whole dog out, this cutie. I'm a fan of chihuahuas, by the way. We have a chihuahua and she's just the cutest. Chihuahuas are kind of special. They have their own mind and they're not really pets. Sometimes they're really wild. Our dog is like super wild. Okay. Okay, so now we have done some basic, nice, like shapes. So I think I will also fill out his snout because we need some of the lighter color here and here as well. Okay, and now I will just use a wet brush and just go over some of the areas again so that they bleed out a bit. Just adding water on the entire painting. Again, this is just playing around. I don't have a specific plan here. Just looking what might look good. And so here we have this blue in the background and I think it's not that bad actually. So I will also take blue. I will use the ultramarine blue, but not too much. Shouldn't be like too extreme. And silver. Maybe a bit of the azurite blue. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. I don't know. Okay, this is very intense. I don't want it to be that intense. Maybe from the other blue. Okay, let's try it. So I will just go and fill out like little clouds, some part of the background, some parts of the background. I want the blue to be more turquoise, like in the reference, so I'm going to use number 51. So unfortunately, the Komorebi watercolors, somehow the colors came off the pens completely, and they completely destroyed like my color chart. So I don't know the colors. I can't say all the color names because it's completely messed up. So that was a bummer when I found that out. I had it stored like not flat, and I think the watercolors are super soft and they slowly come off the pans and then they will completely mess up the box from the inside. So this is not a travel box, definitely not. Yeah, but I do like the watercolors so much, so I decided to use them for this tutorial again, even though the box is completely messed up. Okay, so I added a bit of the turquoise, I like that, but I will also I want also more ultramarine here. So I just want to have a little bit turquoise and the rest should be this really lovely ultramarine. And what else? Maybe a little bit of the metallic yellow. Let's see if this looks good. I don't hate it. It's a little bit intense, but it will fade, so it might be good. Okay, now let's get a bit silver, because silver always fits. Silver fits to all colors. even to gold. So just adding some of the silver. So here it's a little bit too blue for my taste. So what I will also do is I will use the metallic red ochre, metallic bronze, and just add a little bit of the fur color into the background. I think this looks really nice, because then we have the same color of the dog also merging in the background. I think this is very cute. And the dog has a lot of blacks, so I will also have I also want black in the background. So here we have black, and I think I can just dip it a little bit in the ear so that it can merge a little bit, also like bleed outside of the lines of the dog. You don't have to always be in the lines. It looks nice if something breaks them up and make it more loose or more abstract. So just adding a bit of water here so that we can blend this black into the rest of the ear. We have a little bit of black here and a little bit in the tip. And I think I will add some dots here and there too. I think that would fit good. But not too much, because I also wanted to add some sprinkle effects later on in the process, and it might be too much. Also, black can look very quickly like mold, and we don't want that. So, no mold. Okay, now here for the inside of his body, let's take white. I'm just trying it out if that looks even good, because normally I don't really work with white. Let's take white and a bit of the dog color that we just mixed. Just go over the inside. Yeah, so it's like a little bit opaque, and I don't think that's good. Just want to add a transparent layer here. Okay, now it's super messy everything, but that's no problem. The advantage with the Komorebi watercolors is that they are very easily be able to lift off the paper again. So if you make mistakes, which happens a lot with watercolors, at least with me, maybe you don't do that that often, but I do it very often, I can lift the color off, and that's perfect. So I'm just adding a little bit more of the effects. It looks very wild, but I kind of like it. So I will let this crazy wild thing here dry. And after it has dried for a couple of minutes, I will use the hairdryer, because when I now use the hairdryer, everything will completely be even more messy. So let's give it 10 minutes or so. Okay, so our dog has dried, and we can now finally go to the most interesting part, at least in my opinion, which is his super cute face. And I'm going to build up carefully layers and layers until we have captured this cute look here. And I'm going to start with sienna and a little bit of, okay, I can't see the color name at all here. What is it? So the color name was brown, just brown. So I'm going to use a little bit of brown and of sienna. And here in the middle, I had mixed in some of the white, but it makes the colors very, like a little bit opaque. And I hate that with watercolors. They shouldn't be opaque. So I'm going to mix brown and sienna together. Oh, this was a little bit too much sienna. And it's a bit too strong. It's too much paint. So we want to build up the layers carefully, don't want to rush it and then have some ugly spots on the face. So let's start here with the pattern on his head. So above the eyes, he has some kind of like a pattern, and I will just start with the first layer of that. So I'm going to leave the lighter parts out first. I might paint them darker later on when I think I have to correct some values, but for now I'm leaving them out. Also, what you can do when you paint fur and you have to layer like endlessly, you can already add some strokes here and there to indicate fur. So this is not going to be a portrait where you can see every single hair strand. I'm not one of those artists. I know that there are many pet artists or hyper-realistic artists that like to paint every single hair, but I don't like that. I think it looks nicer if you have different textures and just different effects in one painting. And so I like when the hair looks different in certain areas. So maybe in one area it's more detailed, maybe in the other one it's more blurry. When you have a look at the dog photo, you also see that you can't detect every individual hair of the fur everywhere. In some areas they just blend into each other. But again, I really like this style where you have a lot of abstractions and the watercolor works for you, and you don't try to bend the watercolor until it looks perfectly like the photograph. You're doing some nice pieces of art here. You don't want to just copy something completely. Then you can also just take a photo of that. So I'm just adding some fur and some hair here. And then here it gets a little bit lighter. So I will add more water to my brush, like this. And just blend the color into the paper. It is really great. These watercolors, they work perfectly for beginners and also for like advanced artists like I, because you can erase so much. It's almost like you work with normal pencils. I really like that a lot. And especially if you want to make blendings, you can do it as often as you like. So I really like those watercolors, guys. Okay, I'm taking the metallic red ochre here for the right side of his face. So the pattern goes until the corner of his eyes, and then beneath the eyes the pattern proceeds. It gets a bit reddish, so I'm going to add a little bit of crimson into that. Okay, this was way too much crimson, but whatever. The painting looks, for me currently, it just looks like a fox because it's so red. And I haven't seen a Chihuahua in this color in real life, so I'm not sure if the photographer might have exaggerated the color, because I've never seen a Chihuahua that has such a red color, but it's super cute. Also, now because I just have the red on my brush, I'm going to add the pattern on his eyes on the left side as well. And it also continues here on the bridge of the snout, like that. So I'm going to take the red and just continue it on between the eyes, on the forehead, and here along the edges of his eyes. So now we definitely need more layers and it needs to be way darker. So I will take another brown, this time burnt umber, so that it is not that extremely reddish. Just adding it here on his forehead. So we want to build up layers first. And in order to do that, we work from very light, we start from the white of the paper, and then we slowly proceed to get to the darkest parts of our motif. So here I can just add some of the almost a mane. However, here the fur at the side is black, so I'm going to wait until I have black on my brush so that I can add there some of these cute little fur strands. So I'm just filling the area of the body out and the neck area. So it is important that we build up the layers evenly on the entire dog. We can of course just focus on the face first, but then we have the problem that the rest of the dog gets the same color value and the same colors. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to mix the exact same colors again after you have finished certain parts of the painting. So now where we proceed with the rest of the dog, I'm going to change and use a larger brush here. So this one, for example, Princeton number 8. And I'm going to add brown and sienna and a little bit of gray. Here we have a lot of dark hair on the left of the dog. So I'm just filling it out in a blurry fashion here. I don't want to paint the individual hairs, that is annoying. Also, I will leave some of these white spots out because this just makes the painting look more fresh and more watercolory than if you would just fill out really everything and don't give any space for some abstractions and some little accidents. And here on the right, since I have the black on my brush, I can add some really cute little fur, little hairs, like that. And a little bit of them in the inside of the like borders of the neck at the breast too. Okay, now let's proceed with the orange parts of his body. He's so orange. It looks so weird actually. So let's take orange then. And a little bit of sienna. So I'm just going to make it a little bit loose here. Doesn't need to be perfect. We can add more details later if we want that. And I drew the tail in a different position. so I don't rely on the reference here, but that's no problem. It's really easy. It's just pretty much one blob of paint. Again, with orange and sienna, so this is the color of the dog apparently. It's just a very orange dog. I'm going to use a little bit more of the deep black for the tip of his tail. I want to keep it very loose and very fresh. Maybe adding some hair strands here. Oh, okay, this was a bit too much, so I will add just water and erase it. And also it now blurs into the black bleeds into the water area, which looks really nice, as you can see. So maybe I will do this at the bottom too a bit, so that we can have some blurriness here too. This looks really so cute, I like it. Okay, and now I will just add orange where I can see orange, like here on his paw. We have a lot of orange here. And a little bit of red too, so I'm just adding a bit of crimson to the mix. And so the paws are lighter, and the most and darkest parts are here on the left side of the body. So I'll just add a bit more black here. Still looks super messy, everything. So we are still in the very ugly phase, although I really like the abstractions, but besides of that, it doesn't really look much like a dog. I hope it will look in the end. So here's the paw that is in the background. And I want to just blend this orange here a little bit into the tips of the paw, or the end of the paw, however you call it. And here the border of the leg is a little bit darker too. So I just add a border here. And yeah, maybe I will just crack the tip a bit. It looks really weird, actually. Okay, I want to do the inside here of his body. So I'll use the slightly lighter brush, and I'm going to take a bit of yellow ochre and a bit of red ochre and just some of this orange mix and water. So let's see if this is a decent color. No, we need more red. So like that. So here I'm just adding the fur of the inside of his body. So these are just the first layer of that. And I'm just following the curves of the fur. I'm just looking how it like looks. It kind of moves in waves around the body, and I just follow those waves and add some of these hair strands to indicate that it is fur, and not something different. And here at the paws, we want to be a little bit more careful. We have already a lot of loose areas in the dog, and the legs and the paws are these areas that are a little bit less fuzzy, and you can see the shape of the bone structure better than in the body of, for example. So I'm going to be more precise when I'm filling in the paws, for example, and the face of course too, but just adding some details here and there, just as a base layer, that we have a reference for the face and that not everything is super light. This area here needs to be darkened, and it's actually kind of pinkish, so I'm going to use Cerise 22, which is very pink, and I'm going to mix the orange into this cerise, and I think a little bit of blue too, so just a little bit of ultramarine, tiny bit. Yeah, so maybe we have the right shadow color, so it's like a very soft purple, and I'm going to add it in all the supposedly white areas that aren't white at all. It's never white. Just think it's white because when we see the dog, we would say, hey, the dog has white fur on his belly and his chest, but in reality, when we paint it, it isn't white at all. Like, no way. It's kind of pinkish, weird pink, almost like flesh tone-ish fur. So now it looks already very plastic. Would you say it like that? So that it looks like it has depth a bit. And I think, oh my god, the tail looks so messy. So let me correct that. I think that drives me crazy actually. So I'm going to use sienna and crimson, which is red, and then I will try to give the tail a little bit of a shape here. So I'm just adding some little bit of fur and hair strands. Okay, I think this is a little bit better, but this thing here annoys me, but maybe it doesn't matter in the end. So we will see. We will see. I can't speak today, sorry guys. I also have to cough all the time. Let's take some silver. I don't like the white spot here. Just want to fill this up with silver. Okay. And now let's continue with the face. Let's start by adding the blacks of the nose and the blacks of the eyes, so that we have already some reference points from which we can work on. It's always a little bit different when you haven't filled out everything and you can't really compare values. So let's do that first. So I've used ultramarine and deep black and just the brown that was in this pan here. And I will first fill out the cute little snout, the nose, this is the darkest, almost the darkest point. of the entire dog. I think the borders of the ears are very dark too. So I'm just carefully filling out the nose. Since the face is very small, I want to make sure to be precise, so I'm switching the brush. I'm going to use the Princeton Neptune brush round number 2. And then the little cute mouth beneath the snout. And then now, okay, wait, I haven't done it properly here. It's not symmetrical. So I think this is better. Okay, and now here the borders of the snout. They're a little bit more blue actually, and not brown. The more colors you apply when you paint basically anything, the more different colors you apply, the more interesting the painting will look. Like the impressionistic painters. If they wanted to paint white, they just used all the colors but white in order to get white. They just put one paint stroke next to the other one. And it looks super beautiful. So here the snout continues with a gray border. So I'm just going to fill out the gray border here. And then the dark gray continues around the eyes. So I'm going to just render that too. And between the two eyes on the forehead, he has a dark stripe. And also here along the eyes, we have some dark patterns too. So here on the right side, of course, the same. And now we can continue filling in the eyes. So the eyes are actually dark brown, so I'm going to use brown, what a surprise, and black, and a little bit of sienna. This way we should get the exact color we need. So I'm going to fill out the eye very carefully here. Filling out one eye is easy, but both eyes is difficult again because they have to be even, right? So we have to do the other eye too. So I'm just going to fill out the inside. We have also a couple of dark like detail around the eyes, but first I'm going to do the inside. We can't really see white or something, so they're just dark. Then just using the black again, and here I'm just dip the black where the pupil is. I also left a white spot for the highlight, so that we have this one. And now I have black on my brush. And you know, when I have it on my brush, I apply it where I can find it. So for example here, the nostrils, they're almost completely black, I think. So just adding black here, and the little mouth too. Okay, so you're going to need an even smaller brush, and I use Princeton Neptune. I'm not sure how it's called, but it's size number 1. It's just a really long detailed brush, and with that we can do really fine lines. And I want to continue around the eyes, so I'm going to dry them with the hairdryer. Okay, so I just used the dark brown and the black, and I will just make the shape of the eye correct. It was a little bit wobbly. And then at the left eye we have a dark contour around the complete eye, so I'm going to add this. I can only do it with a very small brush like this one, so if you don't have a small brush it will be difficult. So just following the contour around the eye. And on the right eye we have a black contour, but it is even more subtle, but it is there, so I will carefully add that too. So I've zoomed in a bit so that you can see it hopefully a bit better. So we have a couple of small details here around the eyes. One of it being a contour again, and then it's not black, it's more of a dark brown. We have a dark brown contour like directly under the eye, but there's a small gap, a small line between the iris, the eye, and this darker line. And on the left eye we have also this darker line. I'm just going to make this a bit darker and match the color values. And now the inside of the eyes look pretty decent, I would say. So I will continue with the details around them. So we switch the brush and take sienna again and crimson. And here we can already get a little bit darker to build the color value. So the reference photo, when you compare it to the painting, it is so much darker. So we will just carefully build up to these values. And I'm going to start here with the brown beneath the left eye. And I'm just continuing with this brown around the eyes. And so here the whole snout is darker, so I'm just going to draw the brown a little bit into the area of the snout. Then just going to take the dark brown here. And now this complete snout area here is way too light. And the inside of the snout has again this weird pinkish tone. So this time I'm just taking directly violet and see if that works out. And a little bit of the sienna and water. And just adding it here in the snout area. And what we can do now is, since this is all wet, just take a little bit of black and filling in the borders of the snout. So this way we have really nice blending, like a lovely gradient between the borders of the snout. You can also just take a wet brush and follow the edges here. So now we have a really nice blending. Okay, now I'm going to take the burnt sienna and the orange, so that we get a really intense orangey brown. And I will continue here at the edges of the eye. Like that. And just a little bit watered down version of this color for the rest of his face. So everything here needs to be darker, so we can basically just darken the entire area. I'm going to do this by just adding some hair strands here and there, so that we still have the fur look. And for maybe larger areas, I'm just blurring the paint a bit. And here on the right side of the face, we need more intense color too. And also, I will just use a little bit of the neon orange, because I feel that the color is not intense enough, and neon red. Now we have super intense dog fur paint. And I will just go a little bit here over the areas where you have this really orangey fur. This looks really nice, I like that. Okay, back to the brown again. So just filling this, the inside here, a little bit with the brown. And I'm also blending it. I can still add some details of fur later. Okay, so this area here is not white. It looks really light, it's too light. So I'm going to use this weirdish like purple tone that we just mixed for the snout. And I'm going in this light area here and filling it up. And also here on the left side. So let's say this is a little bit too dark here. So I can just go with the brush, go over the area, and I can lift off some of the paint, and see, now it's a little bit lighter again. So this is really a very useful trick, which doesn't work with each watercolor. With Schminke, for example, it's not that easy. Okay, now let's proceed with the fur here on the left. So I'm just filling this out. And I'm switching to the smaller brush number 2. And now I'm just following the fur on the left side of the reference photo, this black mane, just following it and just adding some hair strands, and this looks really nice. So I'm continuing with the snout because I think I might have making a mistake with the proportion, so it's actually a bit narrower, not that wide. And now just to add some details here around his eyes. And also, since when the watercolor is wet it's super dark, and when it's dried it's super light, this nose just dried up very light, so I'm adding a border here around the edges of the nose, because this is a little bit darker than the inside of the nose. And then I'm blending that in like this. And just adding some hair. So let's continue with his ears. I'm just using deep black and the Neptune Princeton brush number 4. And I will just add just some hair at the edges here of the ear. I don't want everything to be furry and don't want every hair strand, so I'm also just blurring it out a bit. And I like how the ear blurs into the background, and I don't want to destroy this nice effect there. So here for the right ear, I'm using black, and then I'm just using water or draw the black along the ear. So just filling in the border of the ear basically. And here it gets brown again, so I will just use sienna and brown. And merge it a bit together. Also using crimson, so that we have a little bit more red in the fur here. For the inside of the ear, using this brown tone, also a little bit of the purple, because I feel we do have a couple of purple tones also in the left ear. And here on the forehead too. So I want to blur out the right ear, and I'm using the larger Princeton brush and just use the wet brush, go along the ear just with water, and then I'm using black, dip it here at the edge, and so it will slowly bleed into the wet area. Okay, since I have black on my brush, I'm going to intensify the little stripe here between the two eyes. And we also need to work on the color values on the left side of the face. For example, here this little pattern is faded again because it has probably dried, and then the color is not that intense anymore. And here the pattern continues and it gets darker until we reach the ear. And here on the left side of his face, the whole area needs to be darker. So I'm just using violet again and sienna to get this darker fur tone. This was a little bit too much though. This was too intense. So I'm just going over the left side of the face, adding a little bit of the orange. And now we definitely come closer to the actual color values, but there's still some issues with the eyes. So before I do that, just taking a little bit of the neon orange and I go over the here between the two eyes. I don't know how this part is called, I'm sorry. Okay, so I want to have a little bit of yellow there too. So I'm using Brilliant Yellow. And this was way too much again. Of course, yellow is always so strong and pigmented. It completely like overlays everything. So I'm just mixing a bit of yellow here. Just working here on the color value, so this needs to be just a bit darker. And now I need to work on the eye, because this eye, the shape is not really right. And this eye as well. So I will switch to the smaller brush and I'm just taking a little bit of the black. And I will just go, just intensify the blacks here again and the contour around the eye, because this one got a little bit lost. And the same, of course, on the other eye. So here I made a mistake. It looks way too dark. Let's see if I can lift off the paint or if I have to use gouache to correct this. I think it works though. So I could lift it off. I think this is good. And a little bit here on the other side too. And I think here it needs to be a bit lighter as well. So it's really practical to have the ability to lift off some of the paint again. Okay, now I feel we definitely need to add details so that everything doesn't look super blurry and like not really like fur, but it could be anything. But first I will add a couple of, although I will start with the details. So I'm going to start with the details on the snout because this for some reason bothers me. And I will just add small strokes here around the snout. To give just everything a bit more detail. And also the dog has, where the whiskers are, it has stripes, so we want to add that too. And just a couple of hair here around his nose, a couple of hair strands, little ones. So again, still black on my brush. And just following the shape of the pattern. But before I continue, I will just hair dry it because it's still relatively damp. So now I'm switching to the detail brush. I'm using black and burnt umber and sienna. And now I should be able to make some decent fur strands and hair strands. So now when we have laid down most of the color values in the face, we can add those individual hair strands to make it look more like fur. So I'm just adding those on top, but I'm also very careful to at the same time still build up the value, so I don't go over areas where I don't see darker fur, for example. I only add that where I can see those darker areas. So I'm going to add those strands a little bit in time lapse because that really takes a long time, and I will just add them everywhere. So I see you in a minute. I added a lot of individual hairs, and now I work on the values. So I'm squinting my eyes and compare my painting to the reference photo and just try to get everything as best as I can, so that I have all the values more or less accurate. So here on the left side, I want to make the mane a little bit darker. And the mane on the right side needs to be darker too. So I definitely want to add a couple of details with gouache, so I'm going to get them now. I'm using light apricot here from the Arteza gouache paints because I think this should be a good highlight for fine hair on the dog's face. So let's try that out. Just going to use the detail brush again and water so that I can actually use the gouache. If it's too thick, I can't really do anything with it. So I'm just adding hair strands. Okay, so this is rather dark, so I'll definitely have to add white gouache as well. Let's mixing just a little bit of the gouache paint here, white and the apricot one. Sometimes the gouache paint is too thick, then I need more water. So now I will just add tiny little hair strands on the snout because it's just not detailed enough for my opinion. So just a couple of details here and there, especially here around the ears. I think we need more of these little hair, whatever. So I think this definitely gives us more detail and makes it look more like the reference photo. So we definitely want to make this pattern here on the forehead. So I will try to render the direction of the hair as best as possible. So I never just add hair and made it up. I always compare it with the reference and the direction in which those hair strands go, which direction the fur grows. For example, it grows from the center of the forehead to the outside of the head. So I'm trying to paint that accurately here. So here I can also use some yellowish paint. So I'm just adding a bit of yellow ochre to the mix. It's not that yellow actually. Let's see. I want to use it for the highlights here around the eyes. Just need more water. Still more water. So this was hopefully enough. So the right consistency is the most important thing when painting with gouache, I think, because when that is given, you have the right consistency of the paint, you can make accurate and decent brush strokes. If it's too thick, you can't do shit with it. It's not possible. So I will just add more of these smaller hair here at the border of the face. And take more of the apricot one. So see, when you have the right consistency, you can make lots of these hairs here. And when it's too thick, it doesn't really work. So I want a blending between the lighter hair and the darker forehead. So I'm going to use more of the apricot paint because it's not as light as the white. Oh, I painted myself, of course. Here on the left, I can also add some of the highlights so that we don't have only highlights in the middle. We also need to blur some of the hair again because it looks the contrast is too big. So I'm definitely going to blur some of it out. But first I will just add more hair. I think it looks good, so I'm just adding more of it. Here on the snout a bit too. And we can give some of it here. Oh, here along the border where the ear begins, we have a couple of light hair strands. It looks so weird now with all the gouache hair strands. Looks so cute though. It does look a little bit different than the reference because I added all these hairs and now it looks a little bit older, like a grandpa dog, but it's so cute. Yeah, I'm going to blur some of the hair strands out though. So it should look a little bit more like the reference. Just some more little details. Okay, so I'm going to switch to the Princeton Neptune brush number 4. And gouache can be activated by water, which is perfect. So I'm going over it. Just blur some of the hair out again, and I'm also going to add a couple of like highlights here, like larger brush strokes with gouache, so this way I still get the highlight, but you don't have like so many details with the hair, and the granny look goes away, or grandpa look goes away a bit. Just going over these areas here, a little bit here over the eye. And now here along the snout. A little bit blurring the hair out above the eyes. Okay, so I want to have some more highlights here. So now I'm just taking the larger brush so that we have a couple of differences here in the thickness of the hair. So here as well, just going to mimic the little stripes at the edges of the snout. It looks so fuzzy. It's not as soft as a reference, but it's still very cute, I think. So I will just add more the hair strands here. Okay, I'm going to use more gouache paints now, and we're going to use orange red, burnt sienna, yellow ochre and scarlet red again from Arteza, and of course white, just to mix some in-between colors. Oh, and I'm also going to use bumblebee yellow just to mix more of the orangey parts of his face. So let's start with mixing orange red to get the orange tone between his eyes, and a little bit of burnt sienna and a bit of apricot. So the goal is that we want to have a little bit more smoothness in his face, because it all looks a little bit too contrasty, and I want it to be more smooth and soft. So I'm using a flat brush. This one is Da Vinci, but it's just a hobby brush, so basically just a brush with a flat tip. When you paint with gouache, you can either make those fine lines that we just did with the hair, or you can work in little like patches of colors, I like to call it, like that, and then put one bit of paint next to the other one. It's a little bit like a mosaic painting, where you have or painting by numbers, where you put paint next to another paint, and it's not so much about doing blendings. With gouache you can do that a little bit later on when you have put down everything. You can wet your brush and go over the areas, and then they smooth out. But I really like the fact that you kind of have to work in little puzzle pieces to get the finished look in the end. And so I apply gouache this way. Yeah, I think this already did something here to the dog's face, and it made it a bit more cute, because we could just go over some of the like sharper hair strands that gave the face a bit of a grandpa look. So I'm just going over some of the hair here again, and I think it already made a difference. Sometimes the tiny differences are everything we need. We don't need to make huge changes. And sometimes it's the opposite. I have to paint over a complete area and use all the art materials that I own, and that's also not so great, but sometimes I just have to do it. Okay, so I want to add this orange here on top of his left eye. So because it is on the reference photo as well, there's like a line of orange above his eye, and the same on the right side too. And then just adding some of the orange here and there. And here I want to make it a bit smoother, the right side of his face. So I'm just adding some subtle brush strokes here, like that. This looks so nice already. And here in the middle I would use apricot and the orange mix that we just mixed, that we also just used, just mixing a bit of apricot into it. And I will just try to add some of these lighter areas here. So it's too dry, for example. You always, when you paint with gouache, I think it's very important to have the right consistency. I feel with oils, for example, you can get away with with a lot, but with gouache and with acrylics, I think the consistency is important because you get a dry brush very quickly, and sometimes this is good when you really want to have a dry brush look, but here in this case I definitely don't want that. So just adding more water to the paint. At the same time, when I add more water, it will be more transparent when it dries. So I try to add as less water as I can, but as much as I need, if this makes any sense to you. Okay, so I'm using apricot and white, a little bit of, what is it, ochre? Yellow ochre? Yeah, it's yellow ochre. Let's see if this is a good paint here. So I want to have kind of a blending between the patterns on his forehead here. Just adding a bit more yellow to it all and white. I'm going to add a little bit of detail on the right eye. I'm mixing white, a little bit of white and bumblebee yellow. It needs to be a bit thicker though, and not that thin again, because then it's super transparent and we don't see it when it's dried. So I just need the right consistency. So I'm just going over this area here. It needs to be more orange. So I'm just taking a bit more orange and yellow and white. Let's see if that works better. Yeah, I think this is the right paint, right color. So I'm just going over the left eye too, so that we have the same color here too. And then here on the right as well. Okay, so I think I will just work on this area there on his forehead again, just using a bit more white. And I will just go over that area. I'm also following the direction of the fur again. This is definitely important, so that you don't have everything kind of messy and it doesn't look like the original fur anymore. And now I want to smooth it a bit out, so I'm using the same brush. I also need to change my paper towel here, my cotton towel, because this one is completely wet. The good thing is with watercolors or gouache, you can always use the same cotton towels, you just have to wash them. This is very good. Okay, so I'm just cleaning my brush and now it's damp. Then I will try to make try to blend in the gouache here. And I'm just trying out if that works out. And if it will look a little bit smoother. I think this is nice. Doing it here on the left eyebrow. Adding a bit more of the white. These are just the last steps, just to add some detail here and there, and also to just work out the kinks and make it look more like the reference picture. So, of course, it's not perfect. I think the left side of the snout needs to be a bit darker, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So I think I will go with it. But we definitely need some more effects on the ears. So I will just continue with gouache, and I will take black gouache. So we're going to use black gouache. Then just following the shape of his ear. And it's helpful to move the brush like as if you want to make one beautiful like curl or piece of hair with just one brush stroke. Like that. So this way we have beautiful brush strokes here, and it already looks really good. It's not perfectly, like it's not a perfect image like the reference photo, but it still looks beautiful. So we'll definitely just let it like that and do the same on the other ear. So if you compare that, here we have nice brush strokes, but here it's just kind of ugly, blurry, wobbly lines. So this is not what we want. So I'm trying to make some better brush strokes here too. So just trying to make like interesting shapes with my brush. And I'm just trying to like form little like bows and curls. It's a little bit like the abstractions that I can't really put it to words and explain exactly how I do it. It's also like a feeling. So the more you do it yourself, you will get better in that. So even if it doesn't work at the first attempt, that's like totally normal. I don't paint animals that often, so I'm also not super like skilled in how to do fur, but this is how I would do it. I think it's really cute. So now where I have just the black on my brush, I'm also using that to just add some black here on his mane. He looks like a little lion. It's so cute. A fox lion or something like that. And a little bit on the left. So also what helps is when you like turn your drawing or your painting, whenever you do those lines. I don't want to do that because my setup is kind of fixed here. So I will just move myself. So I'm coming from the left now and just trying to follow the form here. So here I had not the right consistency and it looks dry. This is annoying. Need to add more water to it. Let's give it another try. It's so easy to ruin ruin your artwork with like one brush stroke. So when you paint with gouache, definitely be careful. And it's better to think a little bit more and to put a little bit more time in waiting and staring at your artwork than rushing and trying to correct everything. Sometimes I just stare at my artwork and think what I can do. And this is the best you can do. Just think about it, try to find what the artwork needs. So the mane follows his cute neck, and now I can just come from the left with my brush and add some really nice like brush strokes. It reminds me of calligraphy art, so whenever you do hair, it's very satisfying. Yeah, let's continue, I would say, with the body. Maybe I will just add some little hair strands here in the middle. This looks so cute already, I like it. So the gouache definitely helped this painting. Yeah, let's switch to watercolors now. Okay, let's continue with the dog's body with watercolors again. So I'm using the larger brush here, number 8 from Princeton, and we're going to use sienna again. And less water, because now we definitely need to add more depth to the dog. But I think we can use the lighter brown here for the inside of the chest, or just for the chest in general. So I'm just going to add some loose hair here. There are some orange hairs in on the belly too. So I'm just adding it here. And we have this orange on the right side of his front leg. Just a little bit more gamboge. I don't know how to pronounce that color. Gamboge. I don't know. It's a kind of orange. So, oftentimes you have, when light comes from directly from the viewer, you will have shadows at the edges of the object. So, for example, everything here is very, very light, but at the borders of, for example, the leg, we have some shadows. So this is definitely not so difficult to paint. When you paint portraits, though, this can be annoying because there it's easier if the light comes from above, so that you get a lot of shadows. Sometimes it's easier with animals too, but here in this case, I think it's not that difficult. We were just adding oranges and reds and browns until this dog has enough depth and looks decent. So I'm adding a bit more sienna to my orange mix so that we can continue to the darker shadow areas here. And I'm just basically looking where I can find this dark brown on the reference. For example, here on the paw, we have a couple of darker spots. The back paw is dark. Then here, beneath the paw, I'm just adding a little bit of the black. It gets darker. And the whole left side is definitely way darker, so I'm just using some of the black that I previously mixed. I'm just using the same paint. I don't bother to mix something new. It's there. Since it's watercolor, we can reactivate it easily. No problem with that. Sometimes I have some little stuff on my artwork here. So I'm using the Payne's Gray because it is a bluish, blackish, dark gray. And this is exactly the color that we need for the shadows. I feel that the black has a blue tint to it. So the Payne's Gray should be perfect for that. Just need more of that. Also, what looks nice is if you start outside of a wet area and then you go with a brush into a wet area, and then the last part of your brush strokes leads into the wet area. This gives also beautiful effects. Most of the effects though are very random and they just appear while I paint, so I can't recreate them as good as I would like to, but this is just watercolor. With watercolor painting, just don't expect anything. Don't expect your painting to look in any way. Just paint and then be surprised with the end result. Because you can't control watercolor, and if you want to control it, it won't look good. So I really like that it surprises us every time. Okay, so we need more darker tones. I'm just using pure sienna now. And I will continue adding some hair strands on the left side, and also need crimson, and I need to wet my palette again here. It's so annoying when it dries up so quickly. So a little bit of crimson. And here I'm just adding some hair strands. He looks so cute already. I just want to have every dog that I see. I just love all dogs. Okay, now need to be a bit more precise for the contour, the little shadow around this paw. And I think I will use the flat side of the brush here to just darken the left side of the dog a bit more. And also, like, this area is very, very intense orange, so I'm going to use some of the neon orange here. I just add it here, and a little bit of neon red. Just add it here, and now we have a super intense orange. I love that. Oh my gosh, love it so much. This is the exact color the reference photo has, like this super intense bright orange. It's like completely unnatural, but it looks so cute. Yeah, I really like it. I'm just a fan of everything colorful, and I also like kitsch. So this is right up my alley. Very bright and intense. Okay, so I just add a little bit of brown to this neon orange to just draw the paw. Just draw this paint a little bit down. And then I will add the brown to the other paw here. And also filling it out. So with paws, I just like them if they're like a little bit rough. I don't put that much emphasis on the paws, although they're super cute. But again, we have put all the detail and the energy in the face. I'm just adding some little details here and there. But if you like, you can do that. You can put as much details in the paws and try to get every, how's it called, like toe right, toe perfectly right. I'm just more or less drawing out the contours of the individual toes here. Here it's a little bit darker, so we will have to add definitely the claws there too, or the fingernails, or how you call it. Like, my vocabulary around animals is not that sophisticated, like my English in general. So what we need to do, I'm squinting the eyes now. And I have the feeling that this here needs to be more orange. This needs orange, this needs to be darker, and the whole tail needs to be darker too. Okay, and we need some dark here. Okay, so I'm going to add some more hair here on the mane. This is so cute. And then a little bit of sienna again. But I'm trying to use not that much water because then it's not dark enough. And crimson, so to get a very reddish dark brown. And then I'm going over his shoulder here. Maybe here a bit. And now I'm just looking and comparing my artwork with the reference and trying to figure out where all the color values are. So if I have the right color values. Most of my painting is still too light, so I just have to juggle and see where to add some more values, but I don't want to completely overpaint everything. So I'm just trying to get the most important thing. For example, here's a shadow, but we need more yellow here. So the orange changes all the time. On some areas it's a little bit more yellow, a little bit more red. So here we have more of an ochre tone, just adding a bit of ochre. And here, this needs to be gray actually. So I'm using some of the gray that I have in my palette, just adding it here and there. And now we need shadow beneath his belly. Remember the purple tone that I previously mixed? I'm just going to add another layer of that in the belly region. Just give it a bit more depth. Then a couple of hair strands to indicate his chest mane better. And now let's go over to the tail. We need black for that. So I'm just adding, I will go to the side again and I will add a couple of hair strands, nice calligraphy effects. You can do that both with gouache and with watercolors. I feel that with gouache we can get a bit more darker, so this is like using gouache is perfect as a kind of last step, so that you know, okay, this area needs to be a bit darker, but not as something that you would do in the beginning of the process because it might be too dark, can't really get blendings done. So gouache is always something that I would do like at the end to correct certain areas. And I have to be careful, so I'm always tending to smudge the wet areas in my painting. That's like so annoying. Like I don't know how many paintings I messed up because I smudged something. It's so annoying. I'm just moving around the painting again. When you are at home, you don't have to move around your painting, you turn your painting. It's way easier and makes so much more sense. But here again with the setup, I think it's easier for you to see I move myself. although it looks a little bit ridiculous, I admit. Okay, this looks nice. I'm going to make a shadow here where the tail meets the body. A little bit like that, like that. And now I will use a smaller brush, the Princeton Neptune number 4, and I will just work on the details of the paws. Here we have some darker shadows. Especially between each toe. But they're not very dark, like they're not as dark as the blacks, for example. So we want to make sure to not make them too dark and make the contrast too extreme. Otherwise it wouldn't look realistic anymore and just would look very weird. So we don't want to do that. Then here we have kind of dark shadow. Then we have some darker hairs again under his belly. Oh, we also need to do some whiskers. I totally forgot that. But we will do that as a final step. I'm just adding some very, very fine hair here. Now let's go back to the paws. I will add a little claw here, cute little claw, and here a cute little claw, and so on. I'm just looking where I can see them on my reference photo. Just carefully add them. Here's one white claw apparently, and here's another black one. Okay, so the two toes here needs to be distinguishable a bit. Adding some hair. And here we have a lot of fur too, so let's add that here as well. So I'm going to add more hair to the Chihuahua everywhere where I think it looks good. And I'm also going to work on, but yeah, I will do that first. I will work on this leg first, and then I will add the hair, because I wanted to show you that in time lapse, because it's just me adding hair everywhere. It's like not that like super informative. Okay, I will need more of this orange, neon orange and neon red. So we want to make like a shadow here on his left leg and make it distinguishable from the rest of the body. So we don't want to have everything being a blob of paint. We want everything to be recognizable as body parts. So we need a shadow that we can see, okay, this is a leg. We have the shadow here on the left, we have it here on the right. Many times it's easier to put contours around everything, but if you're striving for a more realistic or even illustrative look, it's not that realistic to be honest, but just for an interesting style, just don't put contours around everywhere. Sometimes you can just make something pop out from another element by making the other element darker, for example. When I add the shadow here, I can distinguish the belly from the leg, for example. Okay, then. Yeah, so I will add more hair and maybe a little bit more of color values everywhere. I will show you that in time lapse. It's a little bit because I need to be a bit more concentrated and focused, and when I talk, I just don't have the focus for my artwork. I would like to show it to you in real time or just talk about it, but sometimes it's really not possible. So I hope you understand, and I hope you will find it helpful nevertheless. And then when I have finished all of that, I will finalize the painting with some abstractions. So see you in a minute. I have added a couple of hairs here and there in details and worked on some of the values, and now I want to add some abstractions to this dog. So I have to cover, I think it works better with the post-it. I think that's better. Okay, I think I want to have some abstractions over the body, but not over the face. I'm going to start with black. I think some black spots are beautiful. And maybe like that. And now I think some of this gold bronze tone would look good. So let's try that out. I really like if you have a lot of splashes. I don't know why, but I really like that. And I want to have blue too. So a little bit of the ultramarine blue. My palette is so dirty. To clean it. The whole process of painting is just always messy. There's no way around it. Oh, the blue is beautiful. I like the blue. I want to have some larger drops of it. Okay, let's see what we've did here. Oh, I think it's so cute. It's very playful with all the spots. Okay, so I will let that dry and then take off the tape, and then we are finished. I really like how he looks. I think it's really wild, but I definitely like the style. It's something new, and I hope you found it helpful. There are other ways to paint animals. I might try another way where I use color pencils too, and maybe in another lesson. This one was with watercolors and gouache, but again, there are so many different ways on how you can do that, and I hope you found it helpful. So let me know your feedback, and I see you in the next one. Bye bye!